when we were kids, you didn't have licenses and that, and we were allowed to just go out on little boats and catch fish. We could land it because there was no documentation, and we used to get paid what was good pocket money back then. And of course, as times moved on, they got licenses, quotas, restrictions, you name it, it all came in. And now you need bloody certificates and that just to pick your nose, basically. Yeah, well, I've got certificates coming out of my ears. I don't know how many first aid courses I've done now, but I should be working in the NHS. But the other thing that's buggering it all up, obviously the EU and the quota system that they've got, which has got nothing whatsoever to do with conservation.
It's tightened up, it's changed, laws have changed, laws change every year, quotas change every month, so it's very difficult to keep control of what you're doing. I mean, I was only a lobster and a bass fisherman, where if you're fishing for target species, cod, haddock, plaice, ling, sole, everything else, then that annex changes every month, so you can be over your quota within 2/3 of a month.
We're little local boats here, only 30, 40 foot trawlers. We've got a massive great haddock stock, just 6 miles, i.e. 3/4 of an hour from our harbour. Yet, lo and behold, we're not allowed to catch any. However, the French, which have to steam 120 miles to get into our territorial waters, or Britain's territorial waters, they're allowed to catch 5,500 tonnes of haddock.
Around any country you have a 6-mile territorial waters, which is so anything 6 miles from your coastline belongs to you. And then further than that you have a 200-mile economic zone, so other countries can't fish in your economic zone without express permission. That's different obviously in the EU, you can fish in anyone's waters you like really.
Scottish boats wiped our mackerel stocks out in the English Channel. They introduced what was called a mackerel box in the early 80s, which was to stop any pelagic fishing. But 30 odd years on, the mackerel has not come back. That is how severely it was depleted at the point. And that is going to go the same way with other stocks.
There's a lot of legislation in place to protect fish stocks, but it's really hard to actually assess populations in a pelagic environment. So a pelagic environment is any fish that are free roaming throughout the water body.
But the bit that annoys me more than anything else is we catch this lovely, gorgeous haddock, which has taken, 15 years or so to grow? And then for its own good, we have to throw it back into the sea dead. We don't know why it's for its own good, but apparently it's for its own good. And that's it. Apparently that's conservation at its best. Several times this winter, I've had to chuck in excess, without any exaggeration, I've chucked over 1,000 pounds of fish dead over the side in the name of conservation.
What I do fishing is sustainable, so I'll catch 4 or 5 mackerel or whatever, and it'll last me for a couple of days, and it is sustainable. But it's unnatural to go out and catch tens of thousands of fish, tons of fish, all at once, and then sell them,
Is an easy ability to save the fish stocks and make fish. Because of the tragedy of World War I and World War II, which admittedly was a humanitarian disaster, but in this day and age it'd be an environmental catastrophe. However, what that actually ended up is thousands of wrecks on the seabed. Now, as a result of that, that's produced thousands and thousands of tons of fish. Around Britain and Ireland, there's 44,500 wrecks, right? But if each of those wrecks had produced only 100 tons of fish in 100 years, that would add up to nearly 4.5 million tons of fish.
I mean, there's a lot of wrecks out here, and they all hold fish. We fishermen, pleasure fishermen, and you can go to 5 or 6 different wrecks in a day, fish each one and catch decent fish off them. You can set a gill net right around a wreck and take every fish off it. Obviously, the more wrecks, the better.
So many different policies and different laws passed at the UN, at the EU, different summits. They all cover different things, and there's no sort of convergence. There's no equilibrium between scientific knowledge of maritime law, and conservation. There's no sort of merger.
Yeah, they put owl boxes in the woods, bird boxes in the gardens, stuff up in your bloody loft for bats, but they neglect the sea. All they tend to do out there is say, there's too many fishermen chasing too fewer fish. and that's their answer for everything.
You've got fisheries inshore, and so fisheries, protect bass nurseries. So there's a bass nursery at the Helford, and that's an ANOB, which is an area of outstanding natural beauty. And so you have fisheries looking after that.
Bass is a casing example. You may or may not have heard, we're now not allowed to catch any bass. We're allowed to catch 1% bycatch. Reason being, they've been wiped out again by the French pair trawlers, which also catch dolphins. I'll tell you why, because we've actually done it ourselves and found it obscene. The Scottish boats were doing it, but luckily Britain stopped pair trawling for bass 7 years ago. But perversely, and not surprisingly, the French were allowed to carry on until they got it to the point of collapse. Now nobody, including anglers, are allowed to catch any bass, which is not strictly true. They're allowed to catch 1 bass a day.
Bass are a very slow-growing fish, so they're really slow-growing fish. I mean, a £5, £6 fish is probably 10 years old. So what you've got there is, if all of a sudden all these fish are congregating to spawn, and then you get these French trawlers that just go put a massive net around the whole lot of them, and then that's it. Them fish are gone. Then you can't replace them fish. They're stock breed fish. You know what I mean? And you've lost them. So what it's done is it's took 5 years to get this legislation through where we're at now. But because it's took so long, they've had to increase what they wanted to do with it. So originally they just wanted to put a size limit. They wanted to higher the size limit. But now they've had to go for a total ban because it's in that much of a dire mess.
The industry is so big, and there's so many politicians and higher ups with their fingers in business in the fishing industry, where the problem's never going to be solved. It'll take massive social change, people to understand how important it is to conserve the marine environment, just the coastline. It's going to take more than just putting laws in place or legislation. It's a change of mind. It's a change of social stance on conservation.
I think there's so many different species of fish that if you can diverse everybody away from certain species, like if you said to everybody, don't eat sea bass, eat something else, why don't you try black bream, because that's similar to sea bass. And then as soon as they have it, they go, oh yeah, it is, it's very similar to sea bass. Right, there you go, that's one outlet, so let's try another outlet, let's try gurnard, let's try wrasse, let's try pollock, it's all got to have its own chance on it, you know what I mean? So if you can get everybody to like different things, and not just blinker to cod, then the cod's going to stand a chance of living a bit longer, isn't it? So, and the same with tuna. It's just getting people to try different things. There's thousands of different fish out there that you've got to try. If you don't try them, you'll never know, will you? You're only here once.
I understand that local fishermen in Cornwall, it's livelihood for them. If they're not fishing, they don't have any money, they don't have any income, and they're probably from families that have fished for years and years and years and generations. It's a really hard subject to talk about because I don't want to berate local fishermen, but I think that's not the issue. I think the issue is more sort of big companies that are going out trawling, getting like hundreds of thousands of tons of fish a year, millions of tons of fish a year. So Mitsubishi are actually buying tuna stocks at the moment. So no tuna's going to go extinct. Everyone knows tuna's going to go extinct. Population of tuna's dropped 95% since 1940. And so Mitsubishi are buying tuna stocks, buying all the tuna they can and freezing it, so that when tuna goes extinct, they can sell it for so much, as like a rare commodity, a rare food, a high-end food. And it's unethical, it's bad, and it's just, I can't even get my head around how sort of, it's corporate evil, man. It's really bad.